I don't know how far we are into this episode, but we've gone way too long, I think.
We're going to edit out all of the times where it cut out, so we'll lose a bunch of time.
What people will have no idea about when they're listening is that every 15 or 16 minutes or so, we've had to stop recording to restart it because Naomi's hard drive doesn't have no space.
But we have audio, and so that's an upgrade.
So I don't know how far we are into it, but it's going to be a very smooth episode to listen to, I think.
We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the wedge neighborhood right now.
What were you guys talking about before I got here?
Earrings.
Okay.
These earrings, they're very big.
You didn't wear the same. I went to the trouble of putting on the same outfit as yesterday.
I'm sorry. I wore my orange shirt yesterday. I wasn't going to wear it again today.
Okay, well.
But I am wearing the hoodie.
I guess I'm the kind of person who is willing to wear the same T-shirt 2 days in a row. And Naomi is not.
I'll wear the same hoodie, but not the same T-shirt. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
Well, we both look good. Alyssa came back with her big puffy earring things.
Just earrings. Yeah, I did.
Yep.
And in order to appreciate all these comments, people will have to watch on YouTube, I think.
Previously on Wedge Live.
I'm very sad that on whatever the official episode is, the two of you won't be wearing the same outfit anymore, because I was going to ask you so many questions about it. So many. And also, if there's a uniform memo, please give it to me next time.
Well, I'll wear this again. I can wear this again.
I don't own a gray hoodie or an orange t-shirt. There's like literally no way I could have made it work.
Feels like a dig on our fashion sense.
That's it. That's all I wanted to talk to you about.
This is the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. My co-host today is Alyssa Schuffman. And our special guest today is election profiler extraordinaire and sci-fi author and fantasy author Naomi Kritzer. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me.
Alyssa, do you want to give a more elaborate introduction? Because you're a big fan of Naomi's sci-fi authorship.
Yes,
right?
I appreciate everything about Naomi. Yes, Naomi has been nominated for and won multiple of the very big fancy fantasy sci-fi awards for books and short stories, which if you follow awards in sci-fi and fantasy and books and short stories, they are all very good. And yeah, I think I've read fewer of your short stories because a lot of them require subscriptions to all of the literary magazines that I haven't read. But Naomi is extremely talented is the short version. The short version.
Naomi has also written profiles of candidates such as Mickey Moore and Victor Martinez. Let's let Naomi speak for herself now.
Okay, about what specifically?
Well, I tend towards wanting to talk about Mickey Moore, but you can address Alyssa's comments.
I also live in Ward 9. Mickey Moore is running to be my council person, so equally invested at all levels.
So the thing about Mickey Moore that kind of blows my mind is how weird he was like a year ago and how much less weird he is now. It's really unusual for somebody to go from like disposable diapers are the Antichrist and all children should be wearing school uniforms and going to school starting at 7 a.m. and then in 1 year turn into like somebody who like sort of says the normal political stuff. That is odd and
perhaps unbelievable.
It makes me think that there's, coaching involved. But why would you choose him to coach? Like of all the people in Ward 9,
right.
let's think broader than that. Of all the people in the entire broad metro area willing to rent a studio apartment in Ward 9, at least some of whom live in Ward 9, you'd think you could find like a well-spoken kind of conservative dude who would like say the stuff you want him to say and act the way you want him to act, like, and who'd have less weird baggage than Moore, and might also be smart enough not to send out emails saying, "Hey, I want to like fake rent a room from you." Like
Right.
that was really you'd think that somebody would not put that in writing. That's like, that's the sort of thing that smart politicians are very careful to only say on phone calls where they don't think they're being recorded.
He strikes me as kind of like a deal maker. And what do you think he was trying to do in that email was convince the landlord what a sweet deal they were getting. It's
Yeah,
also why I
well,
find
and
it unbelievable that he would loan his campaign $40,000. Like
yeah,
he seems, yeah,
yeah, that I'll say he wasn't wrong that this was like a pretty sweet deal for the roommate that then, would get all the money but not actually have to have anybody living with her. Like that's actually validly desirable, I think, for a lot of people looking for a roommate. Where, ideally, if you could find somebody who would share the rent and not live there, like there's kind of he's assuming there's no downside, and that's kind of true, except for the whole ethical part. And yeah, I don't know what to make of the finances. I just like the thing about politics and politicians is that there are people who will really sincerely believe that they have like as good a chance as anyone else, even though they decided to run 2 days before filing closed and don't have a campaign committee and have no political experience. And they'll be like really sincerely mad at me for not taking them seriously.
yeah.
So people thinking like, I can totally win this, it's totally worth putting money. I mean, that's kind of more common than you would think. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of people out there that are, they have more faith in themselves than is necessarily warranted. So I don't know.
And he presents well. I've watched the videos on his website. Like he's a real pitch man, I think.
Yeah, I've watched a handful of his videos, and yeah, maybe that's why, people encouraged him to run again and to run in Ward 9. I mean, I don't,
And Ward 9 has a history of like, there's been discontent with Alondra, and I feel like they could
oh,
never find anyone who could beat her. So it feels like they've been stuck with Alondra. Alyssa, do you have
well,
thoughts on Ward 9? You live there. What are your strong opinions?
Yeah. So I'm recalling I'm having a little bit of a time struggle because of the panna cotta and the time warp, the pandemic. But the last nomination caucus situation I went to at South High School, where they were determining like whether or not the ward would endorse Alondra or one of Alondra's opponents, it was very contentious. There was a point at which Alondra didn't have 60%. And also everybody voting for all the different people was like, there were 3 candidates, I think, at that moment in time, but it was like Alondra, one serious contender who had like 30 something percent, and a third contender. And everyone was very, like, I think we went through 3 or 4 rounds of voting wherein nobody changed their mind, right? Like there was no, ostensibly, right, part of the caucus is for candidates to be able to get up and talk and for people to be able to hear from them and have the opportunity to change their mind. And people were not changing their mind. And the reason Alondra won the endorsement was because the second runner candidate just walked out and asked all of his caucusers to also walk out. And then all of the remaining people who were there then constituted more than the 60% that Alondra needed to get the endorsement. But it was very clear at that moment in time that the ward was very, very divided about who should be their representative, and that some folks in the ward really did not feel that the caucusing mechanism was fair and could represent them.
the maneuver there, where you try to break quorum, is really common at conventions that I've been to, and I've participated in trying where it worked, and I've participated in that where it totally didn't work. There was a school board endorsing convention many years ago where like somebody came running around and was like, everybody's delegates for so and so, out in the hallway now. And I knew immediately like the goal was to break quorum. So I was like, great, picked up my stuff and like got out to the hallway and looked around, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. Like I knew immediately on getting out there that not enough people had done it. And I think it was because communications weren't quite good enough and people didn't get the memo in time. And, whatever, like that meant that on the next ballot she got dropped, and, they were able to hold the next ballot and she got dropped and somebody else got endorsed. And I went back in and the person who'd been sitting next to me was like, so do you regret leaving? And I was like, no, it wasn't my job to it wasn't my job to figure out whether this was a viable strategy. I just I'm here as a supporter. I was here as a supporter. I actually hadn't arrived as a supporter of this person. I had shifted to this person after my first choice got eliminated. I was like, whatever. I went along with the directions from the campaign and it didn't work. And that's what happened. Is my understanding in 2017.
Mhm.
Yeah, because this was last time. So yeah, people tried to break quorum and it didn't work. And Alondra was like, "Great, I got enough people to run, and now I got 60%." And yeah, that's the you
Turns out Gary Schiff didn't have the juice.
no. And I will say I remember looking at that race. I went and looked at my post on that race the other day, and I mean, I did not endorse Alondra in 2017 because I was not happy with some of the stuff she'd done in her
Right.
first term. But it wasn't like I was a huge fan of Gary Schiff either.
Did you endorse Gary Schiff?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I did endorse Gary Schiff 4 years ago.
I mean,
because I was
nobody can accuse you of making the wrong call, I don't think.
not
You
in
can't
that
be-
race. There's plenty of other races where But and I mean, who knows what Gary Schiff would have been like? Maybe he would have been a disaster in other ways.
Maybe. It's possible. It's the best world for Naomi Kritzer. The candidate you endorsed against went on to be a disaster, and the candidate you endorsed didn't win, so you don't have to take any responsibility at all.
right. I can pretend that he would have been amazing, and just
Don't blame Naomi. She endorsed Gary Schiff, I think is the bumper sticker you drive around with, right?
I would not put that on a bumper sticker. I don't like Gary Schiff enough. But yeah.
Who is your biggest mistake? Who's the one that you don't want us to dig around on your website and post a link to?
Oh, there have been plenty, but the one that because I saw that somebody asked that question. Cale Severson is a park board rep and park board commissioner, and he ran on sort of a solar panels environmentalism ticket, and then got in and was like, golf course, we got to save the golf course. Golf courses are great, they matter so much. And I'm he's not running again anyway, so I didn't have to go back and say yeah, so this guy I was really enthusiastic about, he didn't do any of the stuff he said he was going to do and sucked in other ways. And so but he's not running, so
right.
that's an open seat, and who knows what his opponent would have been like, but probably better because he was really not good.
We need a higher profile name than Cale Severson. I mean,
yeah.
Who have you really gotten wrong?
This is kind of a rude question, John.
Is it a rude question? We're trying to bring up some failings.
I thought about going back through and talking, doing a post. See, in the middle of election season, I don't have time, and then afterwards, I'm I just want to mentally move on. But I really should go through and talk about the ones where the person I endorsed did really wasn't great. And because I do worry about people thinking I have more expertise than I actually have.
Well, you've got a lot of expertise. I feel like in a lot of cases you probably endorsed the right person. It's just that the other person would have been a bigger disaster. There's always that possibility.
That's also right. Like, that's the thing, is that there's some where I'm like, I really don't like this person, but oh god, this person they were running against last time is I would make this same mistake again because that person
Mhm.
is terrible. I mean, I endorsed Linnea Palmisano in 2017 because the only person running against her was an actual Republican.
Yeah, there's a
So,
lot of
like,
lose-lose
yeah,
scenarios.
it's not a yeah, there's no great option there. Um,
Alyssa, what is a polite question to ask Naomi? Because I only have rude questions.
You only have rude questions.
Yeah.
Where can we buy your latest book, Naomi? That's a polite
Oh god.
question.
It's a great question. I usually have they usually have copies that I've signed over at Dreamhaven Books in Minneapolis, and I keep telling Storied Owl, which is in St. Paul. I keep saying I'm gonna stop in and sign their stock, and I haven't yet because I haven't made it over on the days they're open. Um, and Uncle Hugo's is currently running as a mail order business, and they usually have signed copies. But honestly, people who want my book can buy it from wherever they like. If you prefer ebooks, like by all means, go ahead and buy ebooks. And and if you have an unsigned copy and you run into me, I'm always happy to sign it. And yeah, like my newest book is called Chaos on Catnet, and it is set in Minneapolis.
It
Hmm.
is, and it's a book about cats, which makes me think. Like I am not a cat person, but I very much enjoyed the first. I read Catfishing on Catnet, and I very much enjoyed it, and have questions about if this is going to be a trilogy or a longer series.
The moment it's just going to be 2 books. I haven't don't have anything under contract right now, but I set aside to do election blogging, like a proposal for another book that won't be Catnet. It'll be something else. So
Do your stories or books ever get political? Like, are there characters we would find at City Hall, for example? That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in Naomi Kritzer writing a
You're
book
also
with the
you're also
characters that we would find in her election profiles, like Mickey
I mean,
Moore. If you wrote Mickey Moore into a book,
You're
I think
also
that would be
very
very
interested in cats,
compelling.
John. You're like
boy, oh
the
boy,
most interested in cats of anyone I know. You should
Wait,
also really
the,
enjoy these other
I think
books.
so. You had a short story called "Cat Pictures, Please," which was about an
yes,
AI that like asks for cat pictures. Is that what
yes,
the
it is an AI
and
that will reward people who give it lots of cat pictures
and
by
I feel
making their
like
life go better.
that sounds like my life story with the cat tour. I feel like
Yeah.
the AI was people liking every cat picture I posted, and I
Hmm.
was trying to satisfy that need by
Yeah.
inventing the cat tour. I'm the only person in the world who does cat tours.
Right. So, like, that is the sort of thing that the AI would strongly approve of, and would like make sure lots of people saw your stuff that was into it, and would like, try to make you successful in your endeavors so that you would provide it with more cat pictures.
I
So
feel like it's a metaphor for my life. I feel like I haven't
it
read the
is
short story, but the title
it's,
feels like a
it's a
metaphor for
metaphor
my
for a lot
life.
of people's lives.
I don't know. How are you feeling about the state of local politics right now? There's big questions about the future of public safety in Minneapolis. It's dominating the conversation.
Yeah.
It feels like a turning point.
Does feel like a turning point, although it's like the kind of turning point where like the city could elect a bunch of conservatives,
Right.
which wouldn't be great. Although it is only a 2-year term this time, so if Minneapolis elects a bunch of conservatives, they will have the opportunity to rethink that
Mm.
decision fairly quickly.
What I'm worried about with that is in 2 years, the mayor won't be on the ballot. You won't have
Yeah,
rent control on the ballot. You won't have
yeah.
public safety on the ballot. There's potential it's a more
Mm,
conservative electorate in 2 years. So even if progressives
yeah,
win, we could get whipped in 23.
it's true. It is a possibility. Um, yeah, the dynamics of how that stuff plays out is not something I'm super expert at predicting.
Okay. Me neither. I just feel
Yeah.
bad. Do you feel bad? Do you feel good or bad? How do you feel?
I like I always feel really nervous before elections, so that doesn't really mean much.
Okay.
I tend to focus on worst case scenarios, and in some years I like try to get my election blogging done early enough that I can go door knock. But I feel weird door knocking a city that I don't live in. So I mean, I could. People wouldn't turn me down, but also this year I'm not. I'm not like finishing with plenty of time to like, go volunteer. But sometimes the way I handle my anxiety, especially in even numbered years, I handle my anxiety by volunteering once a week.
That's what they
Um,
recommend. That's the advice.
yeah, I've actually found that really helpful in 2018 and in 2020.
So if you could volunteer for any candidate on the ballot this year, locally, who would it be? Who are you so enthusiastic about that it would get you out volunteering?
Oh, let me think. I might door knock for Steve Fletcher. I really think he's worth keeping. He's the one who reps Jacob's old district, and Michael Rainville is running against him.
Yeah, there's a couple with a wide gulf between the two candidates.
Yeah, and I feel like that one's sort of flying a little below the radar, and that's one where that district has some very conservative elements in it, and could go, and Rainville is like, he is bad, but he's not as like dramatically eye-catchingly bad as Moore or what's his face up north,
Victor
Victor,
Martinez?
thank you. Yes, he's not as dramatically he's not as showily bad as like the homophobic pastor dude or Mickey Moore. So and then another one, there's a couple of park board races where like I really like one of the candidates and I really dislike one of the candidates. And I'm going to blank on everybody's name other than Jono. I like Jono, and I don't like the person who's running against him.
The Risa in district, whatever district that is.
And then there's another one where I really like. I want to say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to pull up my blog.
Yeah, do it.
I reference your blog very regularly. Like, people often ask me what my election opinions are about certain things, and I'm like, well, I don't have an opinion about your race, but here is a blog that has an opinion about your race, and it's very clear about why the opinion that they reached is the opinion. So enjoy that. It's useful.
Oh yeah, okay. I really like in District 2. I really like Eric Moran. I think he's really awesome, and I'd be really excited to see him on the park board. And Mike Shelton would probably be like not a complete disaster, and Becca Thompson is so bad.
I think the Star Tribune endorsed her. Did you see that?
I don't like. They have not 100% endorsed the worst people in the race, but they're like, I don't know, 90% of their endorsements, they've gone for the worst option.
I thought with Ward 5, they went against Martinez. They went with Crystal
Porter.
Went with
Crystal Porter, who would definitely be better than Martinez. Like, I would actually rank her because she is better than Martinez.
And so it was kind of shocking they got to 9 and they didn't do the smart thing.
Yeah.
Another weird thing about Victor Martinez is he has a church, and on his church's website he had a booking page for his luxury car rental company, which was weird. He had a homophobic church / luxury car rental company, like a combo there. It's an odd thing. Did you dig that up in your research?
I missed that. Okay. I like looked at his church. I looked up his church, but I think I went too quickly from the page that was like specifically his church to the page that's like the denomination they're affiliated with, because I was looking for like, what do these people actually believe? And I missed the luxury.
It was on his LinkedIn.
Rentals.
It was on his LinkedIn.
Oh, it was on his LinkedIn. Yeah, I didn't see that.
Sometimes when I talk about local politics in Minneapolis and St. Paul to people who live elsewhere, they don't believe me. They just are like, no, you must be wrong. Minneapolis seems like it's got its shit together. And I have to tell them, no, we don't.
No. What's funny though is that, like, I swear to God, like, there are people who from other places who will read my blog and they'll say like I wish our politics were that interesting, exciting, funny, whatever, bizarre. And I'm like, you just need to pay better attention because everybody gets weird candidates. You just
Absolutely.
like they're that person that when the newspaper does their roundup, there's like a shadowy figure instead of a photo, and it says did not return questionnaire, and then nobody goes digging, so you don't find out. Nobody actually finds their webpage where they talk about how like aliens are sending messages through soap and controlling us through toothpaste or whatever. I mean, there's just but everybody has those candidates. They're just they just need to look, unless they have really hardcore ballot access laws that would keep people like that off. But very few places do that in local races because like local races are supposed to be fairly accessible to new entrants.
So without people digging around, like people like Taylor or Naomi Kritzer or me, for example, looking into people like Mickey Moore, like the mainstream press is just not going to cover it. And it had bubbled around on social media, not like rumors, like verified facts that Mickey Moore did not live even in the city, let alone in Ward 9. And it was just ignored, and it finally got to a point where the Star Tribune couldn't ignore it. There's a lot of candidates like that where you're not going to get this information in the mainstream press because if it's anything, it's going to be like Q&A style journalism, and you can't really distinguish the weirdos from the normal candidates.
Yeah. Oh, I've been really happy to see in the last couple of years, like the Minnesota Reformer popped up and Sahan Journal, and like there's like a number of small new independent news organizations that are covering stuff that the Star Tribune is going to resolutely ignore if they possibly can. I was sort of amused. One of the things that surprises me about the Star Tribune's refusal to cover the fact that Mickey Moore doesn't live here is it was genuinely an issue in the New York race, right? The New York Democratic mayoral primary, there was the question raised of where Eric Adams lives. And he definitely lives in the suburbs. Like he was like,
Right.
Look, here's my apartment. And it was his son's apartment. It was like, it did not fit with anything he had previously said about himself. And it was somewhere he crashes occasionally, if that.
And he's a vegan, and I think they found like the wrong things in the. He opened the refrigerator. The TV crew was there.
He's shown off his fridge before. He's like did this post a couple years ago where he like had a photo of the inside of his fridge, and it was like 8 million vegetables and fruits all portioned out in like fancy little containers, and like, and he was sort of bragging about his very healthy diet, like. It's all fine. And so this fridge, it's like you've got ketchup and mustard, one thing of salad dressing, fresh pack of salmon, and like a couple other items. It was clearly not his food. So, and I mean, sure, he's on the campaign trail. He's like eating takeout a lot, and it's New York. So if what you want is like raw vegan takeout, you can totally get that because it's New York. But like, everyone knew it wasn't his apartment. Everyone, including the people who
and nobody cared.
Anyway.
He still won the primary.
Yeah, he still won the primary because like. But I'll also say I kind of feel like running for mayor of New York City when you live like. That's like running for office in Minneapolis when you live in Richfield. He lived in the equivalent of Richfield. He was just barely outside the city. Like Oak Grove would be if you lived in Connecticut. We're running for mayor of New York City.
Maybe we could elect Bill Rodriguez from Operation Safety Now as our mayor. He lives in Richfield.
Where does he live?
Stop. No, stop talking. That's a terrible suggestion.
He lives in Richfield. He could be a strong mayor. So why did you get started writing candidate profiles? That's a weird thing to want to do.
So here's how I started. Back sometime in the early 2000s. Okay, first I started by like having ballots, and I would go to vote, and I would look at the names I didn't know and think like I could just vote for the women, and then I would remember um, this woman in St. Paul who won the Republican primary for Attorney General in 1990. She still runs for stuff. I'm going to blank on her name because I'm just going to blank on names today. But she is Sharon Anderson. She is. You can look up her website, although I don't entirely recommend it. It's like might give you malware. It's full of like it's full of the kind of conspiracy theories that make QAnon look rational. It just yeah. So I was like, no, I better not vote for people I don't know about because I would hate to elect a Sharon Anderson. So after a couple of cycles of this, I realized I could look up my ballot before I went to the voting booth online. You can go to the Secretary of State's office, and you can see a list, and then you can also see a mock-up of the actual ballot. And so I did that, and then I started researching candidates and taking notes. And I needed somewhere to take notes, and I had a live journal. So I just opened up a live journal window, took notes in that, and when I was done, I posted it in case my local friends, of which I had a couple on LiveJournal, found my notes useful, found the research I had done useful. And I did this once or twice, and then I skipped a cycle, and people like, where are your notes? Because they had immediately started, to find it useful. And I was like, if people find it useful, I can keep doing this. And um, that is how I got started on this particular project, and eventually expanded to all of Minneapolis. And then I moved to St. Paul, kept doing Minneapolis, and also did St. Paul. I will never do the suburbs, though. People ask me for the
Oof.
suburbs, and I'm like, no, I do not understand the suburbs well enough to write about them.
Yeah, people sometimes contact me about the suburbs. I'm like, I'm in the Wedge neighborhood of Minneapolis. I'm not going out to the suburbs. But it's an interesting point. When you're the only person doing a thing, you can be the best person doing that thing because you're the only person doing it, right? There's
Yeah.
some not that you don't have a skill for it. You definitely have a skill for it, but like,
Yeah, but the main thing is that I'm the only person for like who's done it for long enough for people to know where to find it again. I think there are other people who've done it, but not for long enough that people started to look for their thoughts.
right, right.
Because I mean, I don't do anything all that. I mean, literally, if all you need to do this is an internet connection, Google ability, Google skills, and like obsessiveness. I
You
don't
have to be
have
sharp.
special. I don't have special connections. Okay, yeah, I guess being able to write coherently is good. Um, but like, I mean, I guess I have long enough political memory that like when I see that Jackie Cherry Holmes has endorsed somebody, I know to see that as a red flag. And I think there's probably a lot of people newer to Minneapolis who wouldn't know who she is. She's been out of office for a
Right.
really long time now.
That's me. I don't know who she is.
Yeah, she was a North Side City Council rep, and she was really evil.
And now she's
She
a
was just
lobbyist.
now she's a lobbyist. She's been a lobbyist for years. Joan Campbell also like I guess she wasn't North Side, but she was a city council rep back in the like around 2000. She late 90s, early 2000s, and they both got tossed out of office in like same year RT got elected. And they're I did not like either one of them. So anytime they show up, I'm like, that's a bad sign about this person that they're endorsing. So, um, and like, so I mean, a long memory is useful, but even if you don't, I mean, I arrived in St. Paul without that because I never paid close attention to St. Paul politics before I lived here, other than knowing who the mayor was. Um, I swear to God, there are Minneapolis people who don't know that Chris Coleman and Norm Coleman are two different people.
I grew up in St. Paul, so
Yeah.
that's not a problem for me.
Yeah.
thing that I'm noticing that people don't know is Gumgazi, the time that Lisa Goodman handed her gum to her opponent into her opponent's hand
That
during
was
a candidate
a
forum.
whole 4 years ago, and the candidate she handed the gum to is running against her again. Like, I don't know how that got lost, but I mean, she's, maybe it involves like, dark magic practiced by Lisa Goodman and other long-standing. She's like the longest serving person at this point, I think,
And
on the
having
city
a
council.
podcast has allowed me to talk to some people who, like Paul Ostro and the former deputy mayor David Fay. Like every time I bring up Lisa Goodman with them, you can tell there's a recognition of how terrible she is, because no matter how long ago someone worked at the city, they have a Lisa Goodman moment in their mind that they can relate to because she's been there
Yeah.
forever.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, Gumgazi was so weird and so gross. It's just like, she was like, it was a joke. And I was like, okay, but if it's a joke, you don't then actually hand the person your chewed gum. What the fuck?
Right. Yeah, that was weird. And so she avoids going to candidate forums even now that they're remote. So I think she doesn't trust herself in public anymore.
Interesting.
That's part of it. She's also she's avoiding some accountability, but I think she does not trust herself to behave in public. She's very bold and courageous at City Hall during a council meeting, but I think she doesn't know how to interact with normal people anymore. That's how
Maybe.
long she's been there. That's my theory.
Sounds plausible.
I can't dispute it.
Okay. All right. Alyssa, do you have anything you want to say before we move on to Strong Mayor? I want to talk about Strong Mayor.
I think we should talk about Strong Mayor. I think we all have a lot of opinions on Strong Mayor and our tiny boy mayor.
Naomi, you wrote that a lot of the worst people in Minneapolis are pushing question 1, the Strong Mayor mayoral control charter amendment in Minneapolis. I've noticed the same thing. The same thing. I think that's a good reason to be against it, along with all the other substantive reasons. There's context around this that I think is important. I talked to Paul Ostro, and he's yes on 1 and 2, and he makes a good faith case that there's a problem with government structure. There's some dysfunction, but I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Naomi, you go. You tell me about Strong Mayor.
I got a guilt trippy comment from somebody because they thought I didn't give it as good of an analysis as they've come to expect from me. And like, I went looking for the people pushing it for their case. And I didn't find anything very persuasive other than like, well, everybody else does it like this, which seems to be kind of, but not exactly true. Because I've read something that then I wasn't able to find again about comparing how things work in St. Paul to how things would work in Minneapolis under this new government structure. And it wasn't the same, and it was different in some important ways. And then I couldn't find this again. But like, the complaints about it were mostly like, the complaints about the current structure. There was a letter to the editor from somebody who worked in city government who talked about how during the Super Bowl, when the Super Bowl was here, there was like some duplication of effort. And I was like, that just doesn't seem like a big enough deal. That's not a big enough problem to justify change this dramatic. Like, it just, especially since like, even when you don't have an inefficient government structure, duplication of effort always happens in government. Like, that's kind of an inherent problem to big events. There's always some stuff that two different groups are both doing it and don't work together very well. That's inevitable, and doesn't seem to, that having a strong mayor system doesn't fix that. So I don't know. I don't know. I just
Look,
I have not found. It's one of those things where maybe it is actually a good idea, and I'm not seeing it, but I distrust the people pushing it so much. And I distrust the timing so much. And people are like, "Oh, well, they just happened to have like finished. They did this whole study." And I'm like, "Okay, but they did this whole study. When exactly did they start it? Did it start after the big push for the public safety charter amendment?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
it feels really related to that." And I I mean, they were willing to postpone the vote on the public safety charter amendment a year ago when people were very clearly wanted to see that on the ballot. The charter commission was like, "Oh, no, 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 we're gonna slow walk it, and you can vote on it in 2021." I'm like, and now this is important enough that it had to be voted on this year. This couldn't have waited for an election with that that had other, that this couldn't have waited. Like, really? Like,
right.
you couldn't have done it in a year when people could have really put more focus on understanding it? I just, yeah.
Yeah, it feels politically motivated, like they're trying to slap down the city council for overstepping. And the
Yeah.
charter commission is totally politicized,
Yeah.
made up of
I,
I mean, everything is political, right? Like, I think existence is political in a lot of ways, so that's not terribly surprising to me. But I think it's also noteworthy that we are in a year where there was like an insurrection and people, right? Like, there seems to be a disconnect around this idea of like consolidation of power as potentially a bad thing, and the fact that like
mhm.
we had an insurrection in Washington D.C. That was this year, right? Like, I'm not misremembering the pandemic timeline on
Yeah.
that. Um, and I think those two things are connected in sort of like the cultural contextual way, right? Like, I don't want to say that like the consolidation of power here is an equivalent to that moment, but I think like given the larger societal context, folks should be thinking very, very carefully about consolidation of power in a way that like this does not demonstrate that level of care to me, and
Yeah.
also raises a bunch of red flags.
Yeah. The argument that like Ward 13 has more people turn out in a typical year than like 4 and 5 together, and thus has like really disproportionate influence over who becomes mayor, um, is a really also really it's a powerful argument in favor of not disempowering the city council in favor of the mayor.
yeah. And also the mayor this year, our incumbent mayor has a like a parallel campaign that his people are running all of Minneapolis, that pack. Very
Yeah.
well
Well,
funded. It's probably going to spend
right.
more than his campaign. So downtown
Yeah.
money also has a pretty big say in who the mayor ends up being.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I mean the fact that like it's the people pushing it are not like saying like vote yes for, the strong mayor charter amendment. They're saying vote yes on one, no on two, and reelect Jacob Fry. And I'm like, okay, I disagree with you definitely on two of those things. That doesn't make me think I should reconsider. I just, yeah.
Yeah. Do candidates ever contact you well in advance to try to win you over? Because we know how influential you are.
Mostly no.
Oh,
I occasionally will get like a note saying something like, please let me know if you have any questions about my candidacy. I do get contacted like as a DFL delegate in my area. If there's an election happening, people will like, you know, send me the same stuff that everybody else gets, but I don't get, uh, I, I haven't very many times gotten sort of the preemptive, like, what do I need to do to win your endorsement? And I suspect it's because people are not sure if that would work or if it would make me mad.
oh, yeah.
Is my
You're
theory on why people don't try that.
you're intimidating. Would it make you
I
mad if someone did that?
um No, but it might make me like, it would feel funny, and like I would be like, I'll let you know if I have any questions, probably. Um, because like I want to try to be fair, and I want to try to look at, I mean, I started out looking at people just as like a voter, and I try to look at people, I try to look at candidates from the voter perspective and not from the perspective of somebody with special access. Although these days, when I send people an email, I usually get an answer, unless unless they don't like me and they're like, there's no point in wasting our time talking to her. Um, but I usually do. If it's somebody that thinks they could get my endorsement, I usually hear back pretty quickly, which doesn't necessarily mean that anybody else would. It used to be a pretty good way of sussing out whether somebody was like responsive or not.
You can use an
And
alias. Have you thought
I
about using an
could,
alias?
I have, but that would require setting up a fake email account and setting up like and remembering the password for it for more than 10 minutes.
Right.
So
What would your alias be if you could pick one?
if
What
I
would
could
your
pick an
alias be?
alias, I don't know.
Yeah.
See, if I were like really good at things, I would pop in a name from a character from one of your books right now, and I just
Yeah.
like
Oh,
Eliana.
yeah.
Yeah.
Eliana is like
Oh,
character
yeah,
in one of
no.
your books, right?
One of my favorite like character names that I used in a book and then I didn't succeed in selling the book, so I could use it again. Is I have a book where the main character's name is Coriander, Cory for short. So I still like that name. So I could be Cory something or other, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I would use as an alias. When I've needed to come up with an alias, I've usually used something very generic, and then I forget it along with the password for whatever it was that I set up.
Are you frustrated by the number of mayoral candidates in Minneapolis? Because I definitely am. I think they should raise the fee. It's too many. The candidate
God,
forums
we
are
already had this
unwatchable.
conversation on the last podcast episode that you made me
I
co-host.
will.
Made
I
you.
will.
You offered. I accepted.
Yeah, and I'll force you to do the next one too.
It's so much better than it was in 2013. Like there were like 36 people or something just insane on the ballot in 2013. So they did raise the fee. And yeah, there's still a fair number of people willing to pay a fee for no good reason, but it's a lot fewer than it was. It was $100. 2013, it was $100 to get on the ballot. That's
Did you
not
raise
much
it
of a disincentive.
for mayor? For mayor, it was just
It
$100.
was $100 for mayor.
Just in Minneapolis, or in Minneapolis
That
and
was in
St. Paul?
Minneapolis. That was just in Minneapolis. Yeah, I feel like it was already more in St. Paul. It was already a higher number in St. Paul, which kept their number of mayoral candidates much more reasonable. But yeah, Minneapolis had, I want to say it was actually 35, not 36. But yeah, it was an unbelievable number. And of those people, like, there were actually a fair number of people with like genuine money and support, like 9, something like that.
Jackie Cherry Holmes, right?
Jackie Cherry Holmes was on the list, and Mark Andrew, and God, Tom Hawk might have been. I don't even remember.
No,
but like
he ran in 2017.
He ran in 2017. Okay, there was some guy that was kind of like him in the. Maybe I'm thinking Mark Andrew. Anyway, there were a lot of people running, and they did in fact raise the fee, and it's cut down significantly the number of people who run. But
every time I bring this up, Alyssa wants to defend maximum candidates on the ballot, and
I'm not defending maximum
wrong.
candidates on the ballot. I'm defending maximum access to democracy, which in many cases also equates to more candidates on the ballot. But I think like it is right thinking about like what is the reasonable threshold, right? Like everybody probably has an idea of what that number looks like, and like you could raise the fee to $10,000 and then only 2 people could file for mayor, and we wouldn't like really be having a conversation about who should be the mayor of the city of Minneapolis. So I
think
just
if you had like if you had like a 200 signature requirement, none of these guys would be able to get 200 signatures.
I am 100% behind a signature requirement because I think that requires organizing and community buy-in at a level that isn't totally dependent on cash in like a capitalist society.
I think signatures would be a good idea. Because it definitely, 100 signatures is like, that's going to be trivial for any real campaign and surmountable for any like determined person. But it's not going to, it'll make it harder for the people who are just running to see their name on the ballot. I don't know how many people it would have kept off this time, honestly. Probably
worth a try.
Yeah, but I think 100 signatures is a more both significant barrier in some ways, and also like, I guess significant isn't the word I'm looking for, but like a meaningful benchmark than $100 or whatever.
Well, it's more than 100 now. It's like $1,000 now for the mayor. You have to, but still, there's a lot of people for whom writing a $1,000 check is going to be a lot easier than collecting signatures. So
talking to 300 neighbors and getting one of every 3 of them to be like, sure, you can run for this.
Yeah.
Do you feel self-conscious about how much influence you have over people's votes?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Stress you out?
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah. There's some races where I feel like, I mean, I decided in which ward is it? There was a ward this time where I said, like, here are 2 people, vote for them in some order, and that these are my 2 picks.
That would be Ward 10.
Ward 10, yeah. Because they're like, both of those candidates are really great, and they're distinctive, but they're like distinctive in ways where I think people can make the choice. They can, people are going to have a preference. And it's also a case where I don't live there. And so I like, if it were very narrow and people voted my endorsements just because they were mine, I'm not actually sure that's the great outcome. Did that make sense? That sounded very incoherent.
Yeah, but the answer was Naomi's a coward, I think that answer. No, I get it. You don't want to be the tipping point.
I don't want to be the tipping point between 2 good candidates. That's when it's like, I could be the tipping point between like a good candidate and a bad candidate, and I'm happy to do that. But if it's a tipping point between 2 good candidates, I mean, in Ward 6, they're both candidates that have a whole lot of issues. And I went ahead and endorsed in Ward 6. But partly in Ward 6, I'm just like, does anyone in Ward... I mean, there are a few people in Ward 6 who care what I think, but there is an awful lot of people in this ward who really don't care what I think. So I feel a little bit more reassured about like my relative irrelevance. But there's some words where I feel like there are a lot of people who read my blog, and if it's very close, I don't think it ought to come down to me tipping it.
Well, I live in Ward 10, and I think it should come down to me tipping it. So
and that's valid because you
vote
actually
for Katie Jones.
Yeah,
vote for Katie Jones.
I think
absolutely. I'm tipping it right now.
That's
tip.
It's actually your ward. I think you have every right to be like, yes, people should just vote my way, and that's totally valid. And I really like her, so I really like Katie Jones.
Should we go to the Twitter questions?
Sure.
Naomi, I saw you poking around on the Twitter questions. You were liking
Yes.
things. You responded to some of them.
Sorry.
Against the
I did
rules.
try really hard to restrain myself, but
I solicited questions on Twitter, and you were poking around ahead of time.
I didn't see it until after our failed attempt to do this yesterday. So, and then I saw it because you tagged me. So. And then I saw them, and yeah, I did answer the one about whether I'm ever going to write about elections in my fiction, and I said no, I am not going to write about elections in my fiction.
I
have, however, read a fictional book about a local election, and it was one of the most grimly depressing, unfun books I've ever read. This would be the book by J.K. Rowling about a local election. It was her first thing that came out after the Harry Potter series finished. And I read The Casual Vacancy. It's about a local election. It's so grim. It's so dark. It's like a really just everyone in it is an awful person. The only person in the whole book who isn't awful is this guy who's the elected official who dies of a brain hemorrhage on page 2, setting off the election. He's the only decent person in that whole town.
Is it for kids?
No, absolutely not. She was like, I've written for kids, and now I'm going to try writing for grown-ups and serious literature. And I read, and I was like, hey, I enjoyed this person's children's fantasy novels. Maybe I will enjoy. Oh boy, I did not enjoy this. I'm not a huge fan of. I quite enjoyed the Harry Potter series, but I'm not a huge fan of really anything she's done since. So, especially the political turf stuff. But
it's
really not into the fiction she's written since then either. So.
Okay, this is a multi-layered question from Twitter.
Okay.
There's so many parts to this question. Favorite underrated candidate and elected offices ever from all time? Do you have a quick one?
So my favorite. This sort of goes with a question somebody asked about who should run again. Devin Hogan, Park Board candidate from 2017.
Why should Devin run again?
Devin had a triangle improvement plan. I love the idea of a triangle improvement plan for the parks because they're all over the city. They're these little tiny little pockets of public land all over the city, and a lot of them are kind of underused. And there's undoubtedly ways that they could be improved, maybe with benches and tables or picnic areas or fruit trees, or there's so many possibilities. And just the idea that somebody would be in office and would be like, what should we be doing with these spaces? I loved that idea. I was sad Devin didn't win, and I think Devin should run again. But they might have better things to do with their time. I don't hold it against anyone who's actually local politics were a pain and not very rewarding. So
Devin is currently the Minneapolis DFL chair.
Oh yeah, see, that's also a valid way to be spending your time.
Yeah, who is going to have a hard-fought re-election? I think. What is it, next year? Is that when that happens? I don't know. It's soon.
Yeah.
So the other part to the question: who that you profiled should never run again?
Okay, there was this, I don't remember his name, but there was this guy in St. Paul who used his campaign website to post revenge porn of his ex. He should never run again for anything.
Yeah.
And there have been plenty of less dramatic, bad people who run for stuff where I
think Mickey Moore seems like someone who's got plans to run again. He should definitely not.
Oh, hey, I agree with that. Mickey Moore should not run again. I would have said that. In earlier this year before he ran again. I would have said he was somebody who shouldn't run again because he was
for his own sake
bad candidate in 2020, and he's a bad candidate this time too. Maybe if he wants to run for something, he could run in Oak Grove, where he lives.
Yeah. Do that.
I'm totally fine with him running in Oak Grove. I really don't care what Oak Grove does with their local political offices. And if they want to elect Mickey Moore, fine.
Do you have thoughts about Greater MN?
No. I really like almost no thoughts on Greater. I mean, I think about Greater MN in the sense of like I follow news. There are a couple people I follow on Twitter who live in Greater Minnesota, and I know I'm supposed to call it Greater Minnesota and not
Lesser
outstate.
Minnesota.
Outstate. That was the thing I used to call it, outstate Minnesota,
Yeah.
and then I found out that people don't like that. It should be Greater Minnesota, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can adapt to that. I mean, fundamentally, like I don't even really know what goes on in the suburbs. So I really like am not going to try to I'm really not going to I yeah, my knowledge of like how to fix relationships between Greater Minnesota and the Twin Cities is begins and ends with, what would be really great would be rural broadband.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big fan of rural broadband. I see that as a huge win-win on so many different levels. We really need to make sure that happens. And part of why we really need to make sure that happens is because it makes jobs in Greater Minnesota more feasible. People can telecommute if they have broadband, and that would allow people who currently live in the cities don't have to be in the office and would rather live in small towns to move to where they want to live. And that would be good. Like, that would be good for them because they would get to live, if people want to live in Tower or Virginia, Minnesota, or whatever, like, great. They can go live there. It would be cheaper for them. The housing there is a lot cheaper. It would support those economies in those small towns. And it'll free up housing in the Twin Cities, which doesn't have enough housing. Like, this is the underemployment of rural Minnesota and the housing shortage of the Twin Cities are kind of two sides of the same coin. And rural broadband is like, it's not going to completely fix anything, but it's going to fix something, and seems really worthwhile and like an obvious thing to do. So,
Alyssa, do you have any thoughts? You work in transportation. What are the transportation implications of rural broadband?
I want to say pass, but I'm not going to do that.
I don't really want to talk about it. I just figured maybe you have thoughts. If you don't want to talk about it, I don't want to talk about it, so we can move on.
I mean, I feel like we have plenty of other things to talk about, and also the short answer is it's very complicated. We could spend the rest of the show talking about this.
Yeah,
so
I'll go back. So there's another question: how to align Greater Minnesota and the metro area more on issues?
I just no idea. I mean, I get why rural Minnesota. One of the really big sticking points between the rural parts of the state and the city is mining, and I get why rural Minnesota is like really wants to be able to have mining and other industrial stuff that the Twin Cities would rather they didn't do. And I get why the cities is like, no, we need to like not do mining. Mining is bad for the environment. I get it. Both sides have a legitimate viewpoint here. I have no idea how you fix this particular clash. It would be great if we could get more people in rural Minnesota to vote for Democrats again, but I also don't feel like I want to say, okay, we'll just give up on environmental stuff. So, yeah, I don't know.
Another question from Twitter. Do you feel weird that I knocked on a guy's door and he said, I'm going to vote however Naomi Kritzer tells me to?
I do find that kind of weird. My sister got door knocked once by somebody, I don't know, a year or two back, and said, yeah, before I decide who I'm going to vote for, I'm going to check my sister's blog. And they were like, oh, you're related to that Kritzer? Because they'd seen her name on their list, and we share a last name. So, and she told me about this a little bit amused and a little bit chagrined. She says sometimes, if you're at all familiar with the show The Good Place, there's this character named Tahani who has a sister who like constantly outshines her, and people get like really excited because they think they're meeting her sister, and then they find out it's her and they get disappointed. And this happens to my sister sometimes, and she feels like Tahani. Like, that is unfortunate. People should not make my sister feel like, they're a disappointment for not being me.
Yeah.
But I do find it I do find it weird and a little concerning, and I hope that mainly what people do is they use my blog as a source of information and don't really just like go down and like check off everything that I've checked off.
Well,
But
you do the TLDR thing where you save people the trouble of having to read, so you do want people to use it.
that's a really good point about the too long didn't read. Maybe I should knock that off.
No, keep doing it. I like it. I
Okay.
like it. People
Yeah.
love that. I want to be told what to
I
do.
think most people read it and then they're like,
Apparently
why?
people do.
And then they go back and read the long form thing. So it's useful.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, that's like, yeah.
Do you get Avengers references? If I ask you a question about an Avengers
Yes.
lineup, are you going to be able to do this?
I watch the MCU movies.
Okay. What is your Avengers lineup of endorsed candidates across the whole city?
I have
Really
no idea.
interested to see who is the Hawkeye of the bunch.
I have no idea how to answer this. I have no idea how to answer this. I was like, I saw that question and I was like, I just like my brain just locked up.
I mean, it's Mitra. Mitra is everyone. Mitra is every Marvel Cinematic Universe
okay,
character.
sure. None of them are my husband's suggestion when I told him about this question and said I had no idea how to answer it is that Lisa Bender is Captain America because she's quitting.
Oh, yeah. Did Captain America quit?
Oh yeah, at the end of the Avengers, he goes off into the past to fix stuff, and then like having done the fixing he needs to, he goes and like hangs out with Peggy instead of like coming straight back.
Oh, so your husband can make Lisa Bender references. I find that impressive. Living in St. Paul, making Lisa Bender references.
Well, he spends a lot of time in Minneapolis, so.
I once saw you eating dinner with your husband. I was at a place in St. Paul.
Oh yeah.
Eating, and I was like, "Hey, that's Naomi Kritzer." And I I was gonna come over, but I didn't.
I was gonna say, did you go say hello? Otherwise, this story is like a little creepy.
He didn't. He was like, he posted about it to Twitter later.
It's a strange choice.
Yeah. Is it? Well, I had planned on it. It was just like one of those things you put off. I don't want to interrupt the meal.
Right.
And by the time,
and then we left. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I sort of remember this, but I don't remember what the restaurant was.
It was like a noodle place, I think. Is there like a famous noodle place?
There's a couple of noodle places. We have. It was Magic Noodle.
Magic Noodle's so
which
good.
Actually might be Master Noodle now. Yeah, it is. It's really good. Yeah, they have really good food.
Moving on. So we're done with the Avengers.
Yeah, sorry. I had no good answers to that one. I'm sorry.
Curious. Here's another question. Curious which gets gnarlier, author Twitter or local politics Twitter? Any book recommendations for escaping when politics gets overwhelming?
Okay, so author Twitter gets gnarlier.
Absolutely.
And so much worse. And I think it's because internet nastiness goes up the less the less likely you are to see people in person. It's a lot easier to be mean to total strangers, to people who exist only as like internet username. And in Minneapolis, you're going to run into people like in person. I have run into a candidate I made fun of at a friend's party.
Yeah, that happened to me.
That was initially I ran into his wife, and she was like, "You wrote about my partner," and I said, "I did," and I like start sort of running through the list of really bad possibilities, and then she tells me who it was, and I was like, "Oh, okay." It was somebody I had made fun of, but I had not been as mean to as I have been to some people. It wasn't, which I mean, this wasn't a party being held by a mutual friend who wouldn't have been friends with anybody really awful, but nonetheless, I was like, and she was like, yeah, you made fun of him for this and this and this, but you also said we had a really cute kid. And it was like, apparently she had decided she was okay with me because I at least said nice things about their child, who was in fact really cute, and was also at the party and was still really cute. So, but Yeah, just the fact that, I mean, and also like, I mean, within Democratic politics, within DFL politics, like the person who is running your opponent, like if you're working on one person's campaign and like somebody is working on like your rival, like the rival candidate's campaign, like you and their campaign manager could be working side by side in the next cycle really easily. Because even if you are not going to work for the same people ever in city politics, like the person who is working for Linnea or working for Lisa or working for somebody else you don't like in city politics could be working side by side with you on a Senate campaign, on a congressional campaign, on a national campaign. Like because like we're all Democrats, we're just very well, there's a few Greens, but like we're mostly Democrats, which means that like we could be, we could be door knocking together for state legislature. We could be like, we could be sitting next to each other at a caucus. Like if we live near each other, there's a lot of things that are going to mean that even if you are not aligned today, you could be in the future. And there's, I think, an awareness of that within like city politics that like it doesn't fully contain some of the drama, but like does make it a little less nasty than it could be. And you don't get that in writer politics. You just don't have that. And like you could like you actually do run into people pretty regularly, especially in science fiction. Like people compare science fiction to a high school because like the number of writers and editors and agents would be about the same number of people as went to my high school. It's like, under 2,000 people. And even if you don't know somebody, you definitely know somebody who knows them. And yet, just the fact that like people are geographically spread out and a lot of people only know each other electronically means that things just, blow up faster and they burn hotter and they are, they can be really nasty over really, sometimes over meaningful stuff, but sometimes not. Like sometimes over really meaningless stuff. And it just,
What are authors fighting about?
oh God. Don't get me started on the whole kidney story.
Everything. Oh my God. I spent like 3 days trying to figure out what was happening with the kidney story.
I completely obsessed about the kidney story for days and days and days and days and days. I came out team Dawn, just in case anyone is wondering.
I don't get any of these references. I can relate
to
the audience
don't
right
go
now
there.
nobody
You don't want to
understands
know.
what we're talking
I'm
about.
very happy for you that you don't get any of these references. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Who are you beefing with, Naomi Kritzer? Who's the author that you beef with?
Oh God. Okay, so I don't know if it would be accurate to say that I beef with this person, but there is an author who I really dislike, who I know he and his wife hate my work, and it gives me so much joy that they hate my work. There's this writer named John C. Wright, and his wife is Jaggy Lamplighter, and so some years back there was this very complicated series of events that where a bunch of conservative writers tried to game the Hugo Awards.
Yes, I read about this afterward.
The Sad and Rabid puppies. The Sad and Rabid puppies, and John C. Wright was one of the people involved in the gaming of the awards, and he was on the Hugo ballot like 36 times for everything, and all of his work is. It's like he's one of those writers who's really impressed with his own beautiful craftsmanship, and also he's incredibly politically conservative and does not hesitate to whack you upside the head with his Catholicism at every opportunity. And so that year was the year that so there was the short story nominations had been thoroughly gamed, so everyone on it was had been recommended by the person who made the slate. But then one of them withdrew. And so then I got on the ballot. That was when I won the Hugo for Cat Pictures, Please. And so I won the Hugo, but I won it because I was up against 4 incredibly bad stories for them. Well, one of them was Chuck Tinkle. That wasn't, it was just weird. But 4 stories that had been nominated for reasons other than like actual quality. So after I won the Hugo, Jaggy, John C. Wright's wife, posted this like long essay somewhere, like her blog, that was obviously about my story and about how some people like it, but it made her feel like she was being poked repeatedly in the eye because of the because there's a gay character in it, and in the story it says that like he's a gay guy who's closeted and working as a conservative pastor, and the AI is like, obviously he will not be happy unless he comes out, and this is what Jaggy felt was poking her in the eye, and I was just like, that fills me with joy.
You're doing a lot of things right.
I don't know if that counts as I don't know if that counts as beef, but like, yeah. John C. Wright is, he's a really bad person. He is a Trumper. He was like, you can go read his 8 million word essays on his blog, all about, how Joe Biden consorts with Satanists and Trump is God. And oh my God, he's just the absolute worst. And I feel like beef is supposed to be a little more cheerful and upbeat, but like, that was what came to mind when you asked John C. Wright.
I was thinking maybe authors you send mean tweets to back and forth.
Authors I send mean tweets to. I don't think there's anybody I send mean. I try, if they're, I try to like, is there anybody I subtweet? Let me think if there's anybody I subtweet.
Subtweeting is exhausting. Both as a person, I don't really do it because feels exhausting, but it's also exhausting to figure out who everyone is subtweeting.
For the kind of trivial stuff where it's just like, this person is high on their own press releases, I don't use subtweets. I send email privately to my best friend. And we have private, delicious snark that we do not share with the internet. Because like, I try to, if I want to be mean about somebody whose ego needs puncturing, I just do it privately.
You don't have to put everything on the internet. I don't put many.
Not everything, yes. Not well, and like okay, so there was actually some sort of beef that made it out onto the Twitters. I don't know, some period of time ago, God knows when, where a whole lot of people were like, "This is what your group chat is for. This is why every writer should have a group chat." And I was like, "Yes, this is exactly correct. There are certain things where complaining to your group chat is the way to go." That might have been when Sarah Dessen, who's a really, really successful YA writer, got super butthurt about somebody saying that her college shouldn't use Sarah Dessen as a common reading, and Sarah got really butthurt about this, and that was, I think, in the end, embarrassing to Sarah. And that was a good example of what your group chat is good for. You can vent to your best friend, and your best friend will give you tea and sympathy. And the entire internet doesn't yell at you for thinking you should yell at a college student.
Or the center of the known universe. Yeah.
Yeah. The second part of the question was book recommendations, and I was going to recommend. I really, really, really love the author Lois McMaster Bujold, who is also local, and she writes both science fiction and fantasy. And I love all of her books, and they are fast-moving and gripping, and really, really fun. And then I also this year I read a debut novel called Hench, and it is sort of a deconstruction of superhero stuff, but it is the author who wrote Hench. It's like this really, really intensely millennial story, and it's so good. It's so good. And I guess what I would say about Hench, I read the excerpt that you can like pull up on Amazon, and I like just reading that first chapter immediately sold me on the book because the voice was so much fun. And if you read it and you're like, I could really take or leave this, I mean, you probably aren't going to love the book. But if you read it and you're like, oh my God, I want to, I want to read more of this voice, then definitely worth your time. When I read it, I bought a hard copy of it rather than an ebook because I wanted to be able to lend it to a friend who I was like, this person will also really love the book. And I was correct. She absolutely loved the book. So.
Somebody else in the reply says, I do recommend Naomi's previous book, Catfishing in it's on Catnet, right?
Catfishing on Catnet is there's two novels that I had come out in the last couple years. Catfishing on Catnet and Chaos on Catnet. Catfishing is the first one and Chaos is the second. And Chaos is the one that sat in Minneapolis.
Okay, let's talk about your amicus brief on question 2, the Public Safety Charter Amendment.
Okay.
Don Samuels
True heroism.
and company sued to get the language thrown out. You filed an amicus brief in support. And why did you do that? Not in support of the lawsuit, but in support of the Yes for Minneapolis campaign to keep it on the ballot.
When I read that it had been thrown out and I read the reason why, I thought, so my first thought was that this was ridiculous. And my second thought was, I have been writing explainers for ballot questions for a number of years now, and this is one of the less confusing ones. Like last time's ballot question, there were two that were so confusing, and I like wrote like I wrote an explanation and like heard from so many people that they had no idea what was even being asked until they read my explainer. Like it was a genuine, the questions last time around in 2020, there were two and they were both really confusing and had no explanation. And that was okay. And it was ridiculous. So I was like, well, they should ask me for my opinion. And then I was like, wait, there's actually a mechanism for people like me giving our opinions. That's like what amicus briefs are for. So I asked on Twitter how you do it. And I heard and I needed a lawyer. Like I was going to need a lawyer to submit it for me. I could write it, but somebody else was going to have to, put it in to the system to make it, but somebody got in touch, a lawyer, who works with gender justice got in touch and said, like, if you want to write it, we'll submit it for you. And so, I had a couple of hours. The turnaround time on this was really, really quick. So I sat down and I looked up. I looked up amicus briefs quickly to make sure like I knew what sort of the basic form was for them. And then I sort of followed that form as best as I could and sent it to the lawyer. And she said she basically she wrote an introduction to it, which is basically, hello, judge, here I have an amicus brief from this person. And then, formatted it so that it followed the rules and submitted it. And I don't think we've actually gotten the opinion yet. Like the judge ruled the Supreme Court ruled really, really fast that they were going to that they were going to put it back on the ballot, and then they said they would actually like issue a full opinion later. And I don't know if we've gotten a full opinion yet, but yeah. So I don't know whether my amicus brief mattered even a little, but it was at least I was glad I did it because I was like I actually genuinely have some expertise here. So
it was a good publicity stunt to sell books, Naomi. That's what I think. I think we've come to the end of the Twitter questions. Alyssa, do you have any questions? Anything rattling around in your brain?
I mean, I have a lot of things rattling around in my brain. What is the scope of what I'm allowed to ask?
Whatever.
One of the things that I've been thinking about throughout this conversation, right, is like the threads between as someone who's like deeply interested in local politics and also deeply invested in science fiction and fantasy, right? As genre fiction, and thinking about like why those of us who find those two things so compelling. And I'm curious if you have thoughts on that. I have thoughts on my own, but.
So part of what I really love about genre fiction is the exploration of what it means to be human. what it means to be a person. And that's something that is in a lot of my fiction. A lot of my fiction is like wrestling with what it means to be a person, what it means to be a decent and good person, what it means to try to do the right thing. And those questions are really potent in politics. What it maybe not so much what it means to be a person, but like what it means to be a good person, how you work together as people to like accomplish things is another really big question in science fiction that is also a really big question in politics. So yeah, does that kind of address what you're asking about?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I think it does. Right. I think for me, it's there's so much about advocacy and political imagination, which are for me are kind of tied up together, and thinking about like what are the worlds we all believe are possible, and like
Oh yeah, for sure.
advocacy and voting is like a form of making the possible real in the current moment, and science fiction and fantasy for me are about that same sort of concept of like we're imagining what is possible. And so I think there's like a lot of parallels in there for me for different reasons, but I really like everything that you said about, especially about figuring out how we accomplish something together is like the project of politics, going back to what you said earlier about like folks having locally having to like figure out how to work side by side moving forward, even though they may have been working for opposing candidates. So I think it's all part of the same bigger thought. You can't help but thinking about it when you read a lot of books, I think.
Yes.
I read tweets. That's what I read.
Also valuable.
I lied. I have one more Twitter question.
Okay.
Why did her dad give me a B in torts?
Because there's a mandatory curve in law school classes.
Okay. You have a lawyer for a dad.
No, I have a political science professor as a dad who teaches at the University of Minnesota Law School. Every now and then when I'll like write something, my dad will email me the next day and tell me something I got wrong. But he's he teaches the U of M Law School, and the classes in that law school have a mandatory curve. So people who might have gotten an A or an A minus in another setting might get a B because you're actually not allowed to give more than a certain number of A's, and then you have to like have a distribution downward.
Makes me very glad I didn't go to law school.
Oh my God, it's such a messed up system. Like there's note that I have not gone to law school. I do have a lawyer brother though, so my brother went to law school. But yeah, no, when I tell people I'm not a lawyer, but I fake it well, it's because I have a political scientist dad who teaches at a law school. I have a brother who's an actual lawyer, and I worked at West Publishing when I was a new college graduate. So like, and I was a tech writer at West Publishing, but like I took a class on like the product line of West, and like did some weird like pseudo lawyer exercises, like learning about the West legal suite of products.
Prepared you well for the amicus brief.
It did, right? Yeah, I was going to say like this is. I would say this is probably part of why I was like I could write an amicus brief. Like it was like this is just a like there's a particular style of writing. There's a particular form. I am very confident I could just sit down and do it because like, I mean, because I've had enough exposure to that stuff that it is. Like there's definitely law stuff that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole or would hire an expert to touch for me with a 10-foot pole. But the amicus brief seemed achievable.
Alyssa, do you have any more sci-fi fantasy stuff to ask about?
I mean, yes, but also I wanna meet Naomi's pet or pets.
Oh,
all right. Is that a thing?
All right, she's been like I kept thinking she'd show up, but no, she like sat next to me shredding paper the whole time, and now she's gonna be like, "No, I don't want to be on the podcast." Hi, Lottie. This cat came back from my daughter Kira went on a college trip to Tennessee and brought home a cat. Yeah,
it was awfully kind.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my husband took her, and she was visiting Sewanee, and they were staying in a motel, and there was this bedraggled little cat in the motel parking lot, and Ed went in and Kira didn't, and a few minutes later she comes in with the cat, and she says, "I asked, and the desk clerk says it's a pet-friendly motel." And it's like, I see.
Now we have a pet.
And they tried to find out if like maybe she had a home, but the motel was like off a highway. It didn't have any houses or housing anywhere nearby. So he had her checked for a chip, and he checked the local Facebook groups and stuff, because like the goal here was not to steal somebody's cat, but as far as he could find out, she was not, nobody was looking for her, and dropping her off at a cat shelter didn't seem like a great option, and she was an absolute sweetheart. So they bought they bought a carrier and brought her home.
It feels like you may have just admitted to a crime, a catnapping on Catnet.
Catnapping. Well, I mean,
it's the third book in the trilogy, catnapping.
Yeah, catnapping on Catnet. Yeah.
Oh,
No, I mean, the thing about cats is we've had a lot of cats that we got just because they showed up on our doorstep, or because they showed up on a friend's doorstep and the friend couldn't keep them. And like only one time have we ever had somebody come looking for a cat. And that time they had adopted the cat because the cat had shown up on their doorstep, and then had decided she didn't like their dogs and went looking
Just
for a
a
new place to
promiscuous
live.
cat.
She was, yeah. Actually, you know what? I take it back. She'd gotten the cat because the cat had showed up on her coworker's doorstep, and then the coworker was like, "I can't keep this cat," and so she'd taken the cat. But and the cat hadn't gotten along with her dogs and had gone wandering, and
We've frozen.
oh, yeah. So anytime our microwave is used, it knocks out our Wi-Fi. I'm sorry. I was kind of thinking it was my daughter got home from rehearsal and is reheating dinner. So hopefully she's done. And so you were going to ask me. Oh my God, it's out of disk space again. I think we should just wrap up as quickly as possible.
I think we should. Let's just attempt to blow through it. Hope for the
Okay.
best. I think the audio at least will be fine.
Okay. All right.
Fingers crossed. Alyssa, do you have final thoughts? I think I was going to ask if you have. What's left? What are we waiting for from Naomi Kritzer? Mayor?
The mayoral.
What are
That's
your
the
thoughts
only
on the
thing I
mayor?
haven't written about.
Give us a sneak
don't rank
preview.
Jacob.
What's coming?
Don't rank Jacob. And I'm gonna write about what I see as the differences between Kate and Sheila, and I am probably not going to tell you who I would rank first and who I would rank second. Just that they would definitely be 1 and 2 on my ballot, and Jacob would not be on it, or anyone else. Honestly, like I like both Kate and Sheila quite a lot, and there aren't any other candidates that I would want to see in the mayor's office. So
it's true. Clint Connor. What do we think about him?
I mean, if you like basically want Jacob's policies, but you hate Jacob, I guess you could vote for him.
You know what's weird about Clint Connor is that he says the strong mayor thing is a bad idea if Fry wins or if any of the other candidates win. But since he is going to win, vote for strong mayor. But he's not going to win. So he's leading us down the wrong path. Clint Connor, you're leading us right down the wrong path. You're not going to win. That's a bad argument.
He's a great example of somebody who's like really convinced he has a chance. Who I will be surprised if he breaks out of. Yeah, well,
couldn't get 1,000 signatures.
I doubt he'd have been able to get 1,000. Well, certainly not, because he would have needed to start earlier than he did. He got in the race in August, and like that's too late. You need to be working way ahead of that, or else you need to be coming in with some sort of like significant experience and gravitas that he doesn't have. So, but he's convinced he's convinced he's going to win it. I will be surprised if he breaks out of single digits, but He might make it past the first round of balloting, but I doubt it.
Well, I just want to ask a question that has nothing to do with Minneapolis politics. What was it like to win a Hugo?
It was so exciting. It was really cool. Uh, I like oh I love the fact that the award ceremonies in science fiction, like we really do like our own style of fancy. It's exciting, and there's a there's a reception beforehand where they try to get you slightly but not excessively drunk, and feed you something. But like the real purpose of it is to just get everybody in a room where they can keep an eye on you, so that you're there when the ceremony starts and they don't have to hunt you down. And then like there was like it was really exciting, and there was like a great party afterwards. It was really awesome. And then since then, in 2019 I lost to Hugo, and then in 2020 I got to win a Minnesota Book Award, an Edgar Award, and a Lodestar Award, all of which were really awesome, and all of which were virtual. Oh look, the cats put in an appearance finally.
Yeah.
All of which were virtual, which was kind of a bummer. It made the whole thing less. It's still really cool, but like you like miss out on the fun of the award ceremony, and the award ceremony really is pretty fun and exciting. And there's just you get to go to a big convention, and there's like cool people there you get to meet, and it's just it's fun. I really like going to cons, and I really like stuff. When I found out I was like nominated for an Edgar Award, which is mystery, I was really excited to go to the Mystery Writers of America convention. And then, like, I don't know, I think less than a week after I bought my plane tickets, everything got canceled. So, 2020, like, just, we'll,
There'll be more award ceremonies. You're just gonna have to keep writing.
right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I am up for the Hugo Award again this year in 2 categories. And this year, the plan is an in-person convention and ceremony. So, and I, I haven't bought I really need to buy my plane tickets because I'm planning to go. I'm vaccinated. I'm boosted. They're requiring vaccinations of everybody going. They're going to require masks. Like it's a reasonably.
The cat is ripping down whatever
Yes.
that fabric was.
Yep, she does that. I'm kind of surprised she left it up as long as she did, honestly. But I, I have been procrastinating on it because it feels jinxed. Because like the last time I bought tickets, we went into global shutdown. Like
One of your stories came through in the worst way possible.
quick. Yes, yeah. So I just. I'm paranoid. I'm paranoid. So it just it's, but no, it was really awesome. It was really exciting. I keep my Hugo downstairs on the buffet in my dining room. My Edgar is sitting on my desk, and my Minnesota Book Award. Oh, this is it's a really beautiful piece of art glass that is also perfectly spherical and fits in this like tiny little holder. And it's like if you said, Siri, show me an award trophy designed by somebody without a cat, this could pop up. It's perfect. It's like a cat would be like poke, and it would go rolling off whatever it was on just instantly. So that stays in a china cabinet where the cat can't get to it.
So it sounds like winning awards is not good when you have cats. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, it's still good. You just have to put some thought into where you store. Like if you win an award that comes with like a cool piece of art or trophy or something, you need to think about where you put it in relation to the cats. So like my Hugo is on the buffet in part because Hugos are actually pretty large and heavy, so like not trivially easy, but like on a mantelpiece, I'm pretty sure my cat could shove it off, and one of my cats could shove it off. So, the buffet, it's not gonna go, it's not gonna go anywhere. So, it's safer.
Everything revolves around cats. That's the
It
lesson
does.
from the podcast today. Awards,
Certainly.
John's tour.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know how far we are into this episode, but we've gone way too long, I think.
Well, you're going to edit out all of the times where it cut out, so we'll lose
Yeah.
a bunch of
So
time.
what people will have no idea about when they're listening is that every 15 or 16 minutes or so, we've had to stop recording to restart it because Naomi's hard drive doesn't have no space.
But we have audio, and so that's an upgrade.
So I don't know how far we are into it, but it's going to be a very smooth episode to listen to, I think.
Hopefully.
It's gonna be great. And I'm ready.
Hopefully.
Is everyone ready for the final question?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want it. John, ask it. What is it?
So this has been a terrible year for me. I hate myself and I hate the world. So I always ask guests, what is making them happy? What do they have to recommend? It could be like a walk in the park, a book, a movie, an experience, a loved one, a cat. What are 3 things that are making you happy?
Fall colors. Pokemon Go.
Yes, applause for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an enthusiastic. Pokemon Go is my primary exercise routine because, like, I have to go for a walk to the Pokestop to spin it every day. And that gets me. That has been my primary form of exercise since the beginning of the pandemic, is playing Pokemon Go every day. And fresh apples from the farmers market. Locally grown apples are really great.
You summed it up perfectly, Naomi. Short and sweet. Well, this has been the Wedge Live podcast. My co-host has been Alyssa Shuffman, and our guest has been Naomi Kritzer, election profiler, sci-fi author, award winner. This was a lot of fun. Thank you both for joining me.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.